for relaxing times. Make it Suntory time. Some of you may remember that line from the movie Lost in Translation. And you may know the whiskey that I'm reviewing today from that movie as well. That movie, along with other things, helped grow the popularity of Japanese whiskey. However, it's still somewhat unknown, especially in North America, especially this brand. We only have the 12-year, and even that's kind of hard to find, of the Hibiki from Suntory. And even to this day, when I talk about Japanese whiskey with people, they'll often ask, Japan makes whiskey? So I'm here today to talk a little bit about this whiskey and Japanese whiskey in general. So for those of you who are used to the 12-year-old, you may want to know more about the 17-year-old. You might also be thinking, this is America. I can't even get it here. Why are you wasting my time? I mean, I might be wasting your time anyway. You're like, I was linked here from Ninja Cat video or something. What am I doing here? And if you were linked here from a video like that, then that's awesome. Thank you for coming. But anyway, the 17-year-old, even though you can't get it in America, you can get it in Europe and of course Japan, and you might be thinking, is it worth the price? It's almost double the price of the 12-year-old, so that's a big decision to make without any idea of if it's any good or not. So hopefully I can clarify that. Some of you gurus may know or may not know that Hibiki is a blended whiskey. It's comprised of Suntory's 3 major distilleries. There are 2 single malt distilleries, being Yamazaki and Hakushu, and they get their grain whiskey from Chita. Cheetah is in the name of the place and not the animal. I don't want to know how one would extract whiskey from wild cat. Ew. Or ow. Anyway, Hibiki is a brand. It had started around the late 1980s or early 90s, around 1989, around the 90th anniversary of Suntory. And what they were going for was to make something that appealed to the masses, because blends were the big thing, the big in thing that day. Around that time, and so they named this Hibiki in honor of that. Hibiki means resonance or harmony. Quite lovely. It's fitting because the whiskey is, well, it's a blend. It's geared more for people who are, it's for connoisseurs, but it's also for the average whiskey drinker who just wants the occasional really nice drink. Again, during that time, the Japanese economy was doing really well, people were more prosperous, and so people started to get interested in more exotic things like whiskey. Like I said, it's more common the more common is the 12-year-old. It's more popular too, partially because it's more common, but also because it's cheaper. People don't like to blow a lot of money, especially if they don't know how something tastes, and a lot of people think it's smoother than the 17-year-old. And a part of that is because the 12-year-old uses bamboo charcoal filtering. It's the only one out of all the Hibikis, including the higher ones like the 21-year-old and the 30-year-old. It's the only one that uses bamboo charcoal filtering. It kind of makes it like creamier and smoother, and people like that a lot better. It also uses younger whiskeys. The younger whiskeys tend to be a lot fruitier, whereas the older ones, especially like the Yamazakis, they tend to be a lot thicker and more bitter, from the oak and sherry and sometimes Mizunara casks. And I'll get into that in a moment in the tasting. All of the Hibiki blends, though, they start with the same process. They actually start with fresh American oak that's filled with some Japanese plum wine liqueur. And after 2 years, they pour that out and they give the plum wine to some mountain monkeys, and they take humorous viral videos for YouTube. And that's a total lie. That's not what they do with it, but they sell it, and it's delicious. And that's a different story. They take what was in that cask, they pour it out, and they refill those plum wine casks with their whiskey blend and age it for 2 years. And I know what some of you smartasses are thinking out there. You're going to say, wait a minute, you said a 17-year-old. How come it's only aged 2 years? You're just making this up. You don't know what you're talking about. That's beside the point. No, seriously, it's actually just what they call finished in plum wine casks. Finishing is a popular thing, especially in Scottish distilleries, like Glenmorangie and Edgeador, among many others, are famous for that. It's basically where you take a whiskey that's already partially aged and you finish aging it in another type of cask. Often that cask is like had some type of liquor, another type of liquor before it. And not just whiskey necessarily, such as sherry and whatnot. So the blend that they put in is already 15 years old, and then they age it for an additional 2 years to make it 17. And that blend is made up of 25 to 30 whiskeys that are at least 17 years of age by the end of their maturation. And that's where the statement comes from. Some go up as high as 30 years, or possibly even older, depending on the whiskeys that they decide to blend with it. But the age statement is based off of the youngest one they use in it. In this case, it's 17 years old. So they take the 17-year-old blend, age it in that cask for another 2 years, and it becomes extra tasty and special. So that's how you get your infamous Hibiki blend. It's bottled at 43% alcohol, so it's not super strong, but that's typical of blends. It's probably got some caramel coloring, and it's chill filtered. I don't believe it says on the bottle. No, it doesn't, but I mean, most likely, since it's a mass-produced blend, that's fine, what's expected. Since it's a blend, we don't mind. So, okay, the important part, the tasting. I know, you're like, shut up, you're in. Okay, so let's go ahead. So, on the nose, okay. There's a lot of licorice, floral, honey. There's a lot of floral notes in this, actually, and that's very common of all the Hibiki blends. And that's surely because of the plum wine casks that I was aged in. It smells almost violet-like, but again, that's probably the plum. There's also a hint of spice, like some allspice, almost. The palate, right off the bat, I get some orange zest. There's a slight caramel and honey to it. And again, the plums are very pronounced and noticeable. There's a fruity floralness in it, much like the nose. And a slight taste of sourdough, actually. Kind of like a grainy sourdough taste, but not a bad taste. There's also a bit of pepper in there. There's some red fruits and a touch of apricot preserves, I'd say. The finish, short to medium finish. I'll say medium. It's medium finish. It's very oaky. There's a lot of oak flavor that comes out, and again, that's probably because of the older whiskeys in it. Again, it's not quite as smooth as the 12-year-old, but I like that. A lot of people like that. Maybe not your average whiskey drinker, but it's definitely more complex. And I think that's a lot from the older ones. Like I said, especially the older Yamazakis. If you have like the 18-year-old Yamazaki, it's a very thick leather, almost like you're licking a baseball mitt. Don't ask how I know this. And like chocolatey and stuff like that. Some of your darker flavors. And a lot of oak influence, probably from the Mizunara, which is Japanese oak. They use a lot of that in the older Yamazakis as well. The younger ones often get more bourbon casks, and I'll probably get into that in some of the future reviews with the Yamazakis I'm going to get into. It's a medium finish. It's very oaky. Again, the apricot's there. And a little bit of pepper again. Overall, it's a fantastic blend. All of Suntory's are. It's a family-owned business, and it has been since it started. All of the master blenders, I believe there's 5 or 6 in total, they all work together every day, and they're very, very consistent. This is a delicious blend. So now I know what you're wondering, is it worth buying? Well, That's a tough one. It depends who you are and what you're going for. Personally, now the 12-year-old is about $60, and this one is about 110, roughly, give or take, depending on the exchange rate and whatnot. So it's almost twice as much. That's US dollars, by the way. And that's a lot of money to be blowing for many of us. I think it's worth it, especially for somebody who appreciates whiskey. Maybe not the highest connoisseur who's really snobby and like, you know, oh, it's a blend, but come on now, let's be realistic. It's a very good whiskey. But even then, it would be good because it's something new that they might not get to always try. So it'd be, you know, a nice surprise for them, and I still think they would definitely appreciate it. And another thing is that you can't go wrong with the marketing. This is one of the coolest and sexiest bottles you're going to find in the whiskey industry. And even in the basic packaging, you get this really attractive leather box. And I believe it's the same for the 12-year-old. It's the same from what I recall. The other thing, too, is that places like duty-free shops in the airport, they have these really extravagant bottles for really great price. So, like, this bottle without the label and like a really nice mural on the back, like the Last Supper. Okay, probably not that one. I don't think they're that Christian. Still, they have these beautiful murals like from ancient Japan and that type of stuff, and crystal decanters, and they just go all out in their marketing for this particular one. And the other cool thing, and the other reason for people who don't want to spend much money to buy this, without a doubt, miniatures. Okay, so what I have here actually is a miniature that I got from 7-Eleven. Yeah, like almost any convenience store in Japan has these or other fine Japanese whiskeys. And what's cool about the Hibiki is that they make the bottle the same design no matter what the size. Most fancy scotches and stuff, you get the miniature and they're like, oh, it's a miniature, you don't really care about our whiskey, and they'll give you like this dinky little, you know, doohickey cheap basic glass or plastic bottle that you get with like the cheapest of the cheap. But this is a really extravagant little thing that you just pick up for like $7 or $8. I forgot what it was, but at like 7-Eleven of all places. I mean, come on, paper or plastic. 12-year-old or 17-year-old, fine blended whiskey. I mean, come on. You can't really get much better than that. So I definitely recommend trying this. This is without a doubt worth the money. And this is worth the money if you're looking for something like a really good gift for somebody, or if you're just curious yourself, or if you want something that's a little more complex than the 12-year-old, and if you have some money to spend, definitely go for this. Granted, there are some excellent Japanese single malts that you can get for around the same money, or sometimes cheaper, but at the same time, none of those come with the fancy packaging, and they won't go for as many palates. Obviously, blended whiskeys match a lot more palates, especially among just base common whiskey drinkers. So overall, I think I give this one an 8.1 out of 10. Now, I knocked off some points for the value because I think it's a little bit overpriced, but at the same time, it's a great whiskey. The palate and nose more than make up for it, so 8.1 out of 10. That's how I feel. So, there you have it. I like it a lot, as you can tell, since it's almost empty. And I'm going to finish this glass right now and enjoy the rest of this fine evening. I hope you do too, and please join me next time. Thank you for watching.